Welcome to a Deserts of Time world building challenge, where today I'm going to be taking 3 random powers using the Superpower Wiki's random button and designing a setting where those powers are totally normal for people to have, a la Avatar The Last Airbender, Hunter x Hunter, and Naruto type anime, right? So, it's a pretty simple idea, but it can be pretty tricky to pull off. This is why I like using my sort of very personal techniques of world building, and I'm going to be sort of explaining it to you as I do this. So, we click random page, and we get psionic derivation, the ability to be the driving force and or source of all psionic / psychic power. Now, that's kind of hard to have everyone have, so what I'm going to do is sort of more so say that this is a world of psychics, or how do we do this? Because it's like, oh, it's a power used by the Force. Okay, come on. And Islamic mythological figures. Like, okay, yeah, that's the one problem with the Superpower Wiki. In fact, I'm thinking of this like I think, psionics. There, we'll just go with psionics, right? And I'm sorry to say, it's like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have. But it's like, it's essentially the same thing in practice. Just one is like, hey, you are all psychics, and this is, everyone is psychic. But that's not the only power that everyone is going to be able to have. We're also going to have injury extension, the ability to create continually damaging affliction. So, every time you get hurt, so these wounds are sort of unending, unstopping. Okay. So, at first it might seem like, oh, this is sort of a random second thing to have connected to psionics, but just you wait. My technique knows how to deal with this. And then third, space-time weaponry, the power to wield or create weapons that control the space-time continuum. Okay. So then you can look at, like, that kind of stuff. Well, it's certainly a pretty powerful world if everyone is able to do these things, but you'd be surprised by what world building can sort of show you is manageable as far as that stuff goes. So, let's get into the drawing and ideating. Just gonna tidy up all these and get to work. So, first off, we've got to just note down what the powers are so I don't forget it and have to constantly be tabbing over. So, it is psionics, space-time weaponry, and of course the other one was injury extension. So, at first glance, the thing I'm seeing is something to do with like mental wounds, right? Like mind wounds, right? This sort of idea of this lasting hurt that only gets worse. Very, very sort of understandable, right? That's a key part of things, is you want to make sure that whatever you're sort of picking up here generally just clicks with your audience. So, mind wounds, that clicks. Psionics and space-time weaponry, that's like, let's see, so, weapons that can break space and time on a common enough level. Now, I know I did sort of say, oh, psionics has got to be sort of downgraded from that one I first got, but, like, I think that this is a bit of enough of a challenge for me to really sort of bite into space-time weaponry being common. And, I mean, injury extension, that's pretty easy. That's just how time shenanigans works, right? Like, hurt you in the past, time shenanigans. So then we'll say that psionics and space-time is something to do with, space linking minds, right? So, therefore, I think space-time weaponry, psionics, injury extension. Okay, so this is definitely sort of injury extension is more so going to be playing a flavor role in this challenge today, right? It's understandable. It's hard to make that like a core aspect, but let me explain core aspects, right? At the core of your world building under my thing is this idea of one central sort of world building conceit, right? Like when you world build, you want to have to sort of stop and explain things less frequently, right? If you can just explain one thing, right? If you just have one thing that you can say to the audience exactly once, and then that's it, then you are way better off to then start and you're able to introduce all these other things that come from that, right? For example, say that your world building and your world is just like, what if, say, World War II wasn't won by the Allied powers, right? Then you get just a whole bunch of cascading consequences that have to be thought through and such, but generally people can understand like how it all comes back to this one core assumption. And that's what all world building is, right? It's about the assumptions you're making that changes it from our world. And sometimes those assumptions can be very simple and sometimes be very complex, but under my philosophy of world building, it's all about making sure that you have as well knit together everything is beneath your core, right? Because like your core, you're not explaining the core so much as everything feels connected through the core, right? So for example, you want to have like, hey, over here, well, we'll get to it. We'll talk through it with this, right? We've got over here, we've got our psychics, right? And here we've got, long-lasting injuries and that kind of stuff, except that really what we want to focus on is this stuff, right? If we've got time shenanigans, linking minds via space, and mental wounding, right? We've got to find what is connecting all of these specifically, right? So, let's think about that, right? So, if we have, like, lasting mental damage, time, travel, conflict, and linking minds across space time, right? So like there's clearly got to be sort of just one central thing that's going to be all of these connecting to, right? It's something that causes lasting mental damage, something that allows for time travel through sort of a linking minds across space-time. And if I've got some ideas here, right? Here's my first sort of big idea that I think could work for a core, is essentially like Steins Gate style time travel, but for everyone. Of course, Steins Gate time travel being that you have a signal that can be sent into the past, right? But all it can send is, just a little bit of data, right? So normally you're just sending little text messages. However, if you're able to send your whole brain through as a message and then hop into a brain in the past, right? That's essentially time traveling because your brain has all the knowledge. Like, you are your brain in through the information that's getting to you. So, what I'm trying to get to here is time travel via brain hopping, right? Brain hopping through time is time travel here. So stuff isn't going through time, just minds and psychic energy. So that's our sort of first thing, is psychic energy time travel. That's my first big sort of concept, mixing together some of these. And of course then you've got obviously, this is just sort of this is sort of just outside the core, because I can't be certain what the core will be yet, right? The core is something you want to have like a good sense of how everything is like just sort of wants yeah, you gotta have a feeling, right, for what's in between all this space between like your surface level ideas and concepts and prompts and your core. And this is what I'm feeling in right now. It's just like this idea of like, what is this psychic energy? And then once we got the core, then we scrap away everything else and we just start working out from that new assumption we make. So all of this stuff that I'm doing right now, it's not actually like none of it's written in stone, right? It's all just like cool, poop, right? It's the don't matter. So psychic energy time travel is sort of a nice, good enough way to look at it. And then you look at that, so, you get time shenanigans, get linking minds. And so now we look at like, okay, so what is it like when everyone has that? Well, that'll be our sort of core. Is it everyone has that, and then we work out from there. But first, we've got to have a better idea of exactly what we're defining as the everyone has, right? Is it everyone is no matter what able to do this? Is a new sort of technology that's become very popular, right? So that's what we'll say is like if we look at that and we really want to say like, okay, let's say there is our core assumption is going to be, in this example, some sort of new technology, right? That appears, and it's like, I don't know, we'll slap it with like GPT AI 7 is now advanced enough to, I don't know, predict the future, blah blah blah. There's something there. It's not important yet. So let's not do that. What we're going to do is just be kind of smart about what we're doing here. Let's just get rid of all that. Okay. Real quick and simple. Just force yourself to get something down because, in fact, what I think I'll do is I'll just pause it for a second and then try and get my words together here. Okay. I think what I need is some limitations, right? Because that's sort of what I'm hitting up against. That's what I'm trying to figure out and just haven't been vocalizing very much. So here are some examples of limitations that we could be putting on, right? It's like, this sort of psychic time travel only works on people who are actively like in a location, like say, the limitation is that it only works on people sitting inside these new specially made boxes, right? So you can't go back any further than before the boxes were made, and you can't do it to people who aren't sitting on the boxes or in the boxes. Is sort of an example, right? That's very Steins Gate-y. Other ideas of limiting it, I suppose, would be sort of more in the lines of, let's think, right? Because like the sort of very first thing I was saying here is that like everyone, these powers are totally normal, right? Psychic energy time travel is as normal as, water bending was, right? So, with that sort of understanding of it, you've just got to see, like, okay, then I would think that probably a good limitation is, here's a way you could do it, right? Is what if it were like sort of a very focused thing, essentially where if you are constantly concentrating your psychic energy, right, and you're constantly emitting this one signal out, right, obviously it's going to get weaker and weaker over time, more spread out, right? You're just one little mind and you send out a boom, and then, you in the future, right, you got a beard now, you hear it with your big old psychic ears and you say, okay, if I've been hearing this same bing every single day from there to then, but that's sort of like because I've also been sending them out constantly too, right? So what it is, it's about like some sort of psychic pinging system. Clearly there's something here, something that could become a core, but I've got to sort of think of it again. So let's sort of look back at again our things here, right? Wounds, linking via space-time, psionics, injury, extension, So, that's a thought. Okay, so it has to do with injury extension. Let's really tie that in as a part of the limitations, right? Let's say that if... Okay, here's a funny sort of thing. Like, you take trepanning, right? the method of sort of cracking open a hole in your skull, right, to let out the bad spirits or whatever. Very popular ancient human cultural practice. Well, what if sort of New Age psionic trepanning existed where you blow open a hole in your head, and then that is sort of your gateway to getting back in from the future. That's sort of the thing. And the travel through it expands that hole, right? You sort of get a bigger and bigger crack. Yeah, I can definitely see something here. So, I think that's our very core. I think we found it. So, that's what I'm going to go with, right? And that's all there is to world building. It's just like thinking about things that sort of are cultural and how you can connect up all these ideas you got. So, trepanning opens a hole to the past, right? So, now that's the sort of space where now we can start saying that and say, okay, so what are the consequences of that? What are the limitations of that? So obviously, I would say sort of an obvious one is if we think of it as like, I don't know if you've ever seen those like fourth dimensional continuum drawings of people where it's like, oh, in the fourth dimension of time, you are one continuous little like snake type thing, right? So if we say through that, like the brain is one continuous worm and the trepanning is just getting rid of the bone in the way or whatever, right? Like actually letting something flow from one to the other through time because of some thing, right? What's it going to be? Is it going to be, I mean, I guess it could be just sort of a thing of the world, right? That's what we're saying because we're going sort of Hunter x Hunter, Naruto, Avatar Last Airbender style, right? Where certain people might have sort of more special techniques of it, but it's not like a drug that you take and it does this, or like a new technology. This is very much just like humans can do that and have supposedly always been able to, right? It might be a hard technique and might take, some training and practice, but it's not like technology. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to swap over to the web browser, but actually I'm going to be doing some world anvil stuff, right? So this will be, brain hole time travel, and I'm going to write this up and then I'll get back to the whole video in a little bit, but I'm feeling pretty good about this, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, just finished it up. So let's just read through what I've written up. Brain hole, time travel, telepathy. In a world much like our Bronze Age Indus Valley civilization, a method of sending messages into the past defines the nations of the world. With the right holes in the head positioned in key locations, thoughts, memories, feelings, and even consciousnesses can be sent into one's past so long as the wound stays open. To the untrained, these thoughts from the future are fleeting and intrusive and very hard to notice. It takes a well-honed mind to receive and decipher a whole message from one's future self. The most sensitive and powerful lobe, the frontal cortex, is accessed through the most advanced surgery, the opening of the third eye. It is only through this opening that entire minds can travel back, indefinitely extending the subjective lifespans of the elders who have learned this technique. So, just realizing I should probably sort of go over. In this case, they're literally cutting a hole open right in the middle of your forehead, and by sending your mind back, well, now you're in your brain, but it's the past, right? So you can just keep doing that. But at the same time, you can't ever, end up any further in the future than you would naturally die anyhow. So it's only the subjective lifespan that gets very old. And even then, you can't go that far back because it's only the most advanced and dangerous surgery that lets you get that opening. So it's a pretty limited technique. In general, though, time travel telepathy at sort of its base level is not a special or unique ability. Anyone can, if given access to their brain through that kind of hole, can do it. But the danger of trepanning makes it limited in availability. Cultures across the world have used this in religion and ritual fortune-telling since prehistory, with the dedicated social status of those who receive the surgery. They are given exemption from manual labor and accommodations well beyond that of the layperson. These people are called the prescient. The prescient are very reliable in warning about future harvests and natural disasters, and so society is both less and more prepared for disaster. Just in case food stores are not a common thing, but city-states warring and raiding the countryside and each other in the years before a horrible drought in order to have enough food before disaster strikes are a dime a dozen. The hardest part for those who will eventually master the technique of time travel telepathy is being ready and aware for when a message is incoming. Careful dream journals help note any messages received while asleep, and mantras let one's inner voice become quiet enough to catch the most distantly sent and quiet messages. The need for knowing exactly when a message is coming from reinforced the need for an unambiguous calendar system. I misspelled unambiguous. And then just sort of talking about the great emperor of the 5 rivers is a king of kings, and at his command are an entire legion of prescients, granting him vital information about military and economic futures to prepare for. So that's about it. I feel like this has been a nice little attempt at putting together something. And if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. I'll be coming up with more little world-building prompts and ideas just like this one, where I take stuff together. If you want to see me build something in specific, just leave a comment and a prompt, and I'll probably work from it. I'll be posting these every Monday and Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.